And get set down, it would help, please. Come on in back there. Find a nice, comfortable chair. Somebody in the back, could you please close the one set of back doors there? I'd appreciate that. Thank you. This is a session on programming for good dances without winging the dance. During this session, we're going to give you a full understanding of just what is a program, what makes it a good program, what makes possibly a bad program, how the programs will differ depending on the event that you're trying to program, how to program possibly for a dance, a weekend, a full season, a workshop, your classes, maybe even something as small a piece as a tip of a dance. How to handle multiple caller programs, how to program for multiple caller dances. Maybe how to include dropping guests without destroying your original program. Many, many things make up a good program, and we have two of the finest fellows I know to present all of the ins and outs of programming. After their presentations, there will be time for questions, answers, comments from the floor. And when that time comes, this session is being taped. We would appreciate it if you do approach the microphone with both questions and comments. And without speaking any further, I'm going to introduce our first panelist on programming from Parkersburg, West Virginia. A man who's been calling for 14 years, has taught 35 classes, calls 5 nights a week, joined CALLERLAB in 1978, ranch house recording artist, and a man who is an expert on programming. His wife Karen brought him to CALLERLAB. How about a nice hand for Keith Rippeto?
You didn't use any of this, did you? No. Well, you stole my thunder right there off the beginning of the talk that I sent to him. I might say that Karen is my first wife for 29 years. I've been calling for 14 years. Like I said, I've done a lot of lessons. I got started in square dancing, and before I knew it, I had 4 sets of lessons. I'm going to give a talk on how I feel that my program works and how I program for a dance as I'm a club caller, they're a regular club caller, or when I'm doing a dance as a caller for a club that doesn't have a caller or hired me in to do their club dance, when I'm calling spatial dances, festivals with other callers, and finally, the one that I feel most important programming for is when I'm the teacher. First of all, included in all my programs is my wife. If at all possible, my wife has traveled everywhere I've ever went since the day I started calling. The dancers appreciate her, probably more than they do me. And if you haven't tried it, try it. It gives you a different feeling and a different feel for the dance. I couldn't do everything that I do without her. I work a full-time job also. I live in square dancing. Included in all my programs is personal appearance. I never take the stage that I don't have Western wear on, no alcohol on my breath, clean shaven, and a decent haircut. In my programs is included responsibility. I feel it's my responsibility to the dancers to be on time, have good equipment, call the best dance I can possibly call, regardless of my feelings or how I feel physically, and that everyone present at the dance has a good time. And I find that from time to time I must remind myself that I'm the employee and not the employer. Professionalism. We all believe in professionalism or we wouldn't be here. And as a rule, the dancers look to us, the leaders in the activity. Therefore, I strive very hard to be as professional as I can at every square dance event I attend. Included in all my programs is the desire to be a credit to our activity before, during, and after any dance social activity or whatever. Attitude. My attitude is always positive, and I let the dancers win each and every tip. After all, it's not what I can call, it's what I can get them to dance. Club dances when I'm the regular club caller. How many club callers we got? Yeah. We can't all be festival doers, right? It's my belief that the regular club caller has the toughest job of all, due to the fact that he must continuously work to changing his program to keep those dancers that dance to him regularly from becoming bored, disenchanted, or whatever. Callers that don't do their homework in this situation are doomed, as far as I'm concerned, and will soon see dancers drifting away to other callers, or even worse, out of the activity. My approach to this dilemma, and I have 3 clubs. I might insert that. Regular clubs that I am their caller, and it's a caller-run club. My approach to this dilemma is to keep records of what I've done from one club dance to another. I review this record before each club dance and use it as a guideline for calling that evening's dance. I feel it's my job as a club caller to keep the dancers up to date on the quarterly selections and to make sure that I use all the figures on the CALLERLAB list for their level and call those figures each dance. Too many dancers are not regularly drilled on certain figures and have a tough time with them when they're called. It's a club caller's responsibility to see that the club can dance all the figures for their level. To do this, you must prepare before the dance and keep a record of what you've done, or you'll end up calling your favorites, and the dancers will suffer because of this. You must use caution here not to do too much at one time, or the dancers will feel like checkers. Here again, if you keep a record of what you've done, this shouldn't happen. I also make sure that I use these figures in the singing calls. This seems to be a plus in my case, as the dancers are more relaxed during the singing call and feel that they've mastered that particular figure if you use them in your singing call. I also keep a record of what singing calls I've done, and for the most part change them from dance to dance. As we all know, some singing calls are very popular, and we probably overuse them. But if the dancers want them, then I give it to them. I do request any time if I have the record. One thing that I don't do is too many ballad, slow-type singing calls. Most of us like to sing because of a thing called ego, and we have our favorites. But I found that the dancers prefer up-tempo singing calls, and the dancer will be much more successful using the up-type singing calls. Another thing I try to do is keep up with the new singing calls, even if I don't like them, and we all run into that. If the dancers like them, then I feel it's my responsibility to know that particular tune. In general, I use club dances to keep dancers up to date while giving them an evening of fun and entertainment, always to the best of my ability, plus it sharpens my skills for other dances. When I'm a guest caller at a club dance, hardly any difference, other than the fact that I approach a dance with a prepared evening of dancing. However, I watch the floor very carefully on the first 2 tips, being alert to problems the dancers might have with what I'm calling. Based on my observations, I can plan the rest of the evening. During the first 2 tips, I use uncomplicated pattern. And we all have our favorite little figure that we can do that kind of checks the floor out. Do they understand what this guy's saying? It has some kind of a nasal drawl. Don't know where he's from.
Hey.
I'm not... They didn't understand Daryl when he came in either.
The other.
Yeah, the other Daryl. I could say the one with her, but that wouldn't work either. Anyhow, I use certain figures, as we all do, and I don't think I'm telling you anything that you don't know, and I vary those figures. And based on the first 2 tips, then I approach the 3rd tip as I'm going to do a workshop figure for this particular group. It may not be anything big deal. It's generally a fun type thing, or it might be something that the dancer came up and said, you know, when Daryl Clendenin was in last week, he did Flush the Tank, and we haven't done that yet. And if I can do it, and they think that they need it, then I'm going to play around with it if it's a fun type call. So I try to do that. Anyhow, in all cases where I do workshop, I use the figure that I taught in the singing call. How many of us has heard a complaint from the dancers, well, they taught it on the third tip, and I never heard it again? Well, I hear that everywhere I go. Well, why fool with it? We got enough material. We don't need the workshop tip if that's the case. So I make sure that I've got a zero figured out, and I use it in the singing call, and I use it the rest of the evening. And generally, everything. I base my evening, I guess, as a club caller on a workshop figure if it applies. Now, if the people don't want workshop, I don't do workshop. Anyhow, I found that most dancers want to dance to the utmost of their ability. Therefore, I try to call just enough material so that they will feel they're dancing slightly above their ability. And regardless of how I feel as to how high they're dancing, I brag on them over the mic. I let them know that they're winning. And I'm just spinning out there and they're doing everything on the comp. And I found that when the dancers come off the floor after you brag on them a little bit, there seems to be a lot more smiles, a lot more talk, and they're ready to do the next tip in a lot sooner time, too. I try to use my best singing calls when I'm out of town or when I'm doing a guest appearance. It only stands to reason. I don't want to try the newest record that just came out on Chinook that I got in the mail the day that I'm on the way to this dance, even though I love the tune. I try to do what the dancers are wanting to have fun with and what they're going to win with and what feels good. Anyhow, basically, I program my dance for this evening around all the dancers present and make every effort to see that they have the best time that they can have, regardless of mine. Festival dances and specials. Basically speaking, I do them the same way I do them when I'm doing it for a club. What's the difference? If my program's working for a club and I'm being booked back, and the festival is in front of me where I'm the only featured caller, then why won't my program work? It's proven, it's working, I'm comfortable with it, and if the dancers like it, I do it. Generally speaking, I leave out the workshop tip, unless that's what they have requested me to do. Most festivals that I do anymore, they got a Saturday or a Saturday afternoon, or maybe both, workshop type thing that I'm having problems with anymore. But we go to the workshop, we do a workshop for the dancers on Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon, and Saturday night, we're not allowed to call the workshop material because it's an open dance. And that's a dilemma. It's kind of taking the dancer's time up to do all that, and then we don't get to do it. Anyhow, I go along with what the people that's running the program tell me to do to a point. If they force me into doing a workshop tip and the dancers can't do it, I immediately cancel it and we have a little talk over in the corner after the tip. Anyhow, that's when I'm the only one. And when I'm sharing the mic with another caller or callers, what I try to do is I don't do harmony. I've got a big mouth, I can sing lead, so I just pray that the guy that I'm with can do harmony, make me sound good. Right?
What are you looking at me for?
I don't know. But anyhow, but I find myself a lot of times wanting to try harmony when the guy's singing and I'm up on the stage with him. And I've embarrassed myself enough that I don't do that anymore. And I'm suggesting that for a lot of people because I hear it at the Nationals and other places that the harmony isn't there. The record isn't there. There's something wrong, or maybe neither one of them do harmony. In my case, if another guy steps on the stage with me, it can't do harmony. We're in trouble doing me singing at the same time, and I share the tip with him. What I've found that the dancers really want, though, they want to think that the other callers that I'm involved with and doing the festival is we're having a great time as callers, and it flows over into the dance. So I try very hard whenever I'm working a festival to work with the caller and do my best, and maybe talk to him to do his best, that the dancers think we're the greatest thing that's hit in a long time. And here again, no matter what the situation is, I think the dancers should win, and we should remind ourselves that here again, we're an employee and not an employer. One-night stands is one of the things that we program for. Everybody does it different. I just tell you how I do mine. When I do a one-nighter as entertainment or a demo, I have a group of dancers with me, and we'll do a very easy level type dance so that those that are being entertained or observing will come away with a feeling that square dancing is fun for everyone. And it's not complicated. That stuff didn't look that bad. I do more singing calls than usual. They don't seem to get a lot out of the patter or the hash, the people we're trying to entertain. They're more familiar with the tunes, so we try to do more of them. If the evening is for entertainment and not a demo, I generally get the non-dancers up a few times and have them do a few basics, hoping that they'll become interested and want to enter our favorite pastime. If it's a demo, I do less singing type calls and try to get more dancer participation to get more people. The mall stuff that we're talking about, where we do demos at malls and things like that, I try to get the people that are walking through the mall, hey, jump up here and try this one time with us. Let's see what this is all about. And I do something very easy so they can do it. And here again, they're brand new to the activity. We've got to make those people win if we want them to come out for lesson. I found that one-nighters tend to recruit more dancers than any other form of advertisement that I do. The demos and the one-nighters. So if you're not doing them, consider doing them. Last. How am I doing on time?
Oh, you're doing wonderful.
Tons of time. Okay. The most important program that I think that we as professional square dance callers can prepare for is lessons. We've already got the people dancing if we're calling a club dance. It's those people that we got to nurture and love and care for that's in lessons that we need to seriously program so that they learn each and every tip. Not each and every night. I'm talking about each and every tip. Every tip that we do, regardless if it's for lessons or not, I feel that it ought to be a dance. Every tip. Whether we're starting out brand new, the first night out, we got 9 couples that don't know one thing about what we're talking about. But the first tip that they do, shouldn't we call it like we're trying to make it the best thing that we can make it for them? Anyhow, and I'll probably get screamed at by a few people, because I do my classes and programming for my classes differently than CALLERLAB suggests. I do follow the CALLERLAB listings. I don't follow the list per se, but I do all the moves on them. Anyhow, programming for lessons is probably the most important thing we can do as callers to ensure the future of our square dancing activity. Any program that is really working, I support regardless of how it's done. If the program produces dancers that complement our activity, then I'm for it, and would like to hear from you when it's done. And what I mean by this, I'm chairman of the Area Representatives Committee. My address is in the handouts, and I'd like to hear from you. If you've got a successful program, our committee wants to know about it. And I'm looking for volunteers all over the country for area representatives. My program for teaching lessons is different, to say the least, but it's worked for me many years, and I'll try to explain the best I can, hoping that I'll not be expelled from CALLERLAB. Let's also keep in mind that each area has many different variables to deal with that influence just how and what we as callers can program for lessons. In the area that I teach for, there's only one dance program, plus. If you can't dance plus, you probably won't be dancing. We've tried the mainstream, we've tried the basic, and they work long enough to keep the people until they are over in the guy that's doing the plus workshops. We're a small area also. It's not the dancer's fault. It's mine and the other callers. Another thing that the clubs require in my area is that these people be brought to some level of plus in one season. Approximately 32 weeks of 2.5-hour lessons. I'd like to know how many people is faced with that dilemma. I'm not in bed alone, am I? With these restrictions in mind, I've followed the same program for quite a few years, and it seems to work for me. First of all, I work very hard at making the new students relax and enjoy lessons, as they would enjoy any activity. I reason that the first few lessons will set the course for the rest of their square dance life. I asked the club to Angel. If it wasn't for that, I couldn't do it. That's all there is to it. If the club didn't come out in Angel, there's no way I'd get these people through the program. I found that if they'll do it, I'll give them a little workshop tip of some type, which they seem to like real well, while the class is resting. And they know that they're there to help the class, therefore they generally stand on the floor for 2.5 hours. And they don't complain anymore. They're having a good time and they're glad to do it. Anyhow, that's what I do, and I try to keep these little workshops during lessons. The quarterlies that come out on the mainstream and the plus list, I try to maintain that during those little workshops for the club that's Angel in this class that is about to go through a way over course. And because of the Angels, I'm probably able to do more than a lot of other people do with the same restrictions that don't have the Angels. We've got to keep that in mind. I teach some more complicated figures the very first night, so I can get the new students dancing figures enough to do singing calls. And I keep referring to this thing called singing calls. You see what my reasoning is and all that. My reasoning for this is that we drill too much initially and tend to scare them off. You know, the people, if they feel like they're checkers, they're going to go home. And I'll give you an example of my first night, and then I'll be finished. The first tip, I go through the normal teaching. Honors, circle left, element left, grand right and left, and so on. 4 ladies chain, 4 ladies promenade, and, you know, those can be done in the first tip if you have Angels. That's nothing big deal about that. On the second tip, I review these figures. And I generally teach star through and California 12. Keeping in mind that some learn faster than others, I make sure that everybody's learning. Not 90%, not 15 out of 16 people, but 100% are winning. Now, if they're not, then I have to back off, as anybody would do, and wait until they've won. The fourth tip of the evening, this is the first night of y'all, is the most important, because I teach in this order: ocean waves, girls trade, swing through, boys run, bend the line. Now, I've already taught them star through, right? So when we do a star through after we bend the line, they're looking at the corner. Swing a corner and promenade. And I stay on that little gimmick right there until they've got it. And we do a sing call, fourth tip. And I use the figure in the sing call, and I progress the corner. And they're dancing, and we've had failures. I'd be a fool to sit up here and say that we wasn't. But all during this time, I'm bragging on these people how well they're doing. And they love it. And it doesn't cost me a single thing. And they accept it and do it very well. The rest of the evening, we use the material that I've taught. It's obvious I've overloaded. Somebody said, that's 22 calls. First night. I never counted. That's always worked for me. If it doesn't work for you, don't do it. Okay? I also maintain a list of figures that I've taught each night, and I'll review them as long as necessary. One of the things that I found out is because I use the figures that I taught in the singing calls to the students. Now, we're talking about student level. For some reason, they seem to learn faster. It's amazing. My class at home right now, I taught spin, chain, through until I thought I was going to go crazy. I had one of those people that wanted to turn around and go the other way. Then when I got her corrected, her husband decided it was time for him to start doing it. Anyhow, you know, so I said, well, okay, let's do a sing call, relax a little bit. And on the last figure in the sing call, I did spin, chain, through. They were right through it. And do you understand that? Sometimes I don't. I think they're more relaxed in the singing call, and they don't feel any pressure on them to get through there. And I'd be a fool to tell you that there's not pressure to get people through lessons. There's pressure. I haven't talked to a caller yet that doesn't have some kind of pressure to get people through lessons. Anyhow, I try to, one other thing that I do is as soon as they can stand it, and I've got a list of records, and even Daryl's got one of them, that I put on for the students as soon as possible. And we might be talking about the 5th night of lessons, that I let them dance to somebody other than me. And I get down and dance with them. You know, I'll ask somebody else to sit down. Oh, the caller's down here dancing with them. You know, big deal. They get nervous and all that. But they have a good time with it. If it's really getting sad, you know, if everybody's got a long face, I'll screw the square up. And then they can laugh at me. But all the time, they're winning. And that's the name of the game as far as I'm concerned. In closing, and Dale told me to be positive, and I hope that I have been, there's a few observations that I've made about some programs that I've saw, about my peers. And that is, what's wrong with them? Too much emphasis on level identification. We don't advertise any level in our area. How can you? We only got one. I see a lot of poor judgment in patter figures, jerkiness. The same thing in singing call selection. You know, if you're doing real well with a singing call, why would you want to put it away and take one out if you sound like a rooster somewhere to do it? I don't know why they do that. Disregard for the new dancers attending an open dance. I've seen dancers stand in the back of the hall, and that's where they always square up. We don't have our dancers trained to go back anymore like they did when I came to square dancing and come back and force us to come up and dance up front. They just leave them back there at a lot of places. And the caller leaves them back there. Why can't we get them in lines? And, you know, do a little progressive stuff. Bring them up front, put the good dancers, maybe they'll be mad at you. But you can come back there for one tip. Integrate them. Poor teaching skills. Or worse than that, doesn't teach new dancers at all. Not bringing anything into the activity. Taking more from square dancing than they're giving. Missing dances. Late. Selfishness. And one of the things that seems to be coming on in some of the areas that I'm going to is sexual innuendos over the microphone.
What?
If it hadn't been for that spell checker on my word processor, I could have never spelled that word. It's got 2 M's in it. I see it. You believe me. Openly running around on their spouses with total disregard of what the dancers think of it. And has forgotten that square dancing is for the dancers too. Thank you.
What's that mean?
You better give them a definition of what a innuendo is.
I'm not going to tackle that. No way. This is mine. Okay. Next, a fellow that comes from down under. And I always wondered if that meant that we're up over. Do you suppose? I don't know. This guy's been calling for 27 years. 27 years. That's 2 years longer than I've been living. Teaches callers regularly, works many, many weekends and festivals in his country. He operates a tape and record service with his wife Wendy, has recorded on Top Records, FTC Records, Sets and Order Records, and before long we'll have a new release out on Hodowner Records. I'd like you to give a nice USA warm welcome to Mr. Brian Hotchkies from Australia.
G'day, mate. Thanks, Daryl. I feel a little bit like Elizabeth Taylor's 4th husband on the first night of their honeymoon. I know what to do, but I'm not sure how to make it interesting. Keith has already covered the types of functions that require programming, regular club dances. If you're booked as a feature caller for a club dance, a workshop, one night stand, or as a feature caller for a festival, and also for beginners classes. There are a number of different types of programs that you may need to be involved with. One is a tip for tip. We call them bracket for bracket in Australia because of our accent. We're a bit scared of saying something wrong. Is that a sexual innuendo? So we call them bracket for bracket, where you're looking at the numbers that you're going to do in each bracket. Session for session, if you're involved with a weekend festival and you're deciding what sort of a session you're going to have on Friday evening, what sort of a session you're going to have Saturday morning, is there going to be a session Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and Sunday, and maybe a trial-out dance on the Monday if there's going to be such a thing. Also, the programming of callers over a period of time. If you're involved with a major festival or a convention and you're charged with the job of programming the callers, you've got 75 callers and you have to put them all in a programming spot somewhere on the program, and then their name's going to be printed in a program so that you'll have a balanced program. These are the different sorts of programs that you may need to be involved with. There are a number of different factors which will influence your decision regarding programming. One is the quality of sound. We all know that the quality of sound is different everywhere we go, and I wasn't at Houston, but a lot of people have been talking about Houston, and I guess this is a situation that callers would have to deal with at your own club. Normally the sound is as good as you can possibly have it because you have many opportunities to experiment and get the sound right over a period of time. 2, the experience and skill of dancers. Have you got all dancers of similar standard, similar ability? Are they all basic dancers? Are they all mainstream dancers? Are they plus or higher level? Or are they dancers that have come along not knowing square dancing at all in a one-night stand or a beginner's class situation? Or do you have a mixed bag? And very often callers do have a situation where you've got people of very limited experience dancing or trying to dance with people that have a much greater experience. And this is a factor that's going to influence your decision in programming. 3, dancers' expectations. Are the dancers coming along expecting a dance of a particular level? Are they expecting it to be plus, or are they expecting it to be advanced? Are they expecting it to be a workshop, or are they expecting it to be a party night? These sort of things are also going to influence your programming decisions. Number 4, the familiarity of the caller by the dancers. Do the dancers know who you are? Are you a visiting caller that's coming into an area where you haven't called before? If this is the case, then you're going to make certain programming decisions that would be different than if you're calling for your regular club that you call to every week. 5, floor conditions. Sometimes we find the floor is fast, or it's particularly slow, and in some cases it's rough, or it's even growing in some cases if you're dancing on grass. And I've even been in halls where the dancers have started dancing all over the floor and have all ended up on one side. And we found out when we put a level on it that the floor was even sloping. And if you know that this sort of situation exists, then it will influence you in your programming decisions. Number 6, the ease of seeing all the dancers. And we've come across this a couple of times in Australia. We had a national convention. We had an enormous stage, and the caller was at the back of the stage with the sound equipment. The speakers were up front, and the dancers were starting at the front of the stage and of course going across the dance floor, and it was very difficult to see any of the squares very clearly. And anybody that was going to try sight calling would have needed binoculars to try and work out who their square was. Now, if you're going to find yourself in a situation like this, then of course it's going to influence whether you're going to use modules or whether you're going to sight call or whether you're going to use the FF and PAL system, which is fidget, fudge and pray a lot, which I know some of us do use from time to time. Also, you might find that you're calling in a situation where the dancers are scattered through a couple of halls that you're calling for. You may have facilities where all of the dancers can't be accommodated in the one hall, and you may have a large percentage of the crowd out of sight, and this sort of thing will also influence your programming factors. How crowded are the sets on the floor? This is also going to affect the type of choreography that you use. You're not going to use choreography that says head men's style left and pick up your partner and keep turning, that lady pick up a corner, and then that man pick up his partner, end up in a great long line across the set. You're going to end up with people clashing false teeth and ending up in situations where the squares are very crowded. I've recently been involved with a situation of the willingness of the dancers to participate, and when I mentioned this to Daryl, he said, "Hey, what sort of a situation's that?" And I was asked to teach a group of school students for an exhibition. As most of you will know, it's Australia's bicentennial this year, and I was asked shortly before I came over to train 16 sets of school children to put on an exhibition at one of the school's outside functions. And I found out fairly quickly that a lot of the children weren't terribly enthusiastic about square dancing. They were enthusiastic about getting out of lessons, but as soon as I said join hands and circle to the left, they didn't like the idea of touching each other. And of course this is going to influence your decision too. If you know that the dancers are going to be slightly hostile, then you're going to tread very carefully with what you do. Expected age of the dancers is also going to be a factor for you. Are they going to be all elderly people? Or are they going to be a family group where you have children and adults and grandparents all in the one group? Is it going to be a junior group where everybody is below the age of, say, 10? All of these things are going to affect your programming decisions. I've got a little section here that I'd like to just talk about briefly regarding programming of callers for multiple caller functions, where you may be given a list of, say, 25 callers, and you have been asked to program the callers so that your program can then be printed up and given out to the dancers and given out to the various callers, so that you will know where you're calling and all the callers will know where they're calling, and also the dancers will know who's on the program and when they're on. First of all, you need to have a good knowledge of the participating callers and their ability and their popularity. I then divide the callers into 3 groups according to their ability, or to my knowledge of their ability. One is what I would classify as the top callers, and these are ones that are able to lift the floor. They're popular with the dancers, and they're always dependable. You know that they're always going to do a good job. Group 2 would be the average caller, and these are the callers that have had reasonable experience at calling for large groups and for major functions. Group 3 is the less experienced callers, or the ones that you know are going to do a poor job, or possibly ones that you don't know very much about at all. We all know that there are some callers around that aren't as popular as others, yet when they come along and bring dancers to a major function, they are entitled to call on the program if that's the sort of function that's being programmed. I then have these basic rules that I apply when writing the program. I never program a number 3 caller. That's the caller that maybe is not going to do the job that you would like him to do, at the end of a bracket. And I might point out at this point that in Australia, most of our tips are 3-number tips rather than 2-number. Quite a few of the callers, including myself, are using 2-number tips most of the time, but if you come along to one of our national conventions, you'll find that there are usually 3 callers on in the program for each bracket. And quite often the hoedown is the last number, which is exactly the reverse of what you have here. Although also quite frequently we'll start with a singing call, have a hoedown in the middle, and then the singing call at the end as well. I would suggest using, if you're going to use a number 3 caller, I'd suggest putting them together with a number 1 caller so that you can lift the floor, and always have your number 1 caller at the end of the bracket. Don't put your number 3 caller at the end of the bracket, because if the dancers had a lousy time dancing to the poor caller, if he's at the end of the bracket, they're going to sit down thinking, well, gee, that was a terrible bracket. If they danced to that person at the beginning of the bracket, then they're going to be then diluted by a caller that's really a top-line caller to finish things off. And it's the last thing that they did that they're really going to remember, that'll stick in their mind. So if they had a good time for the last number, then they will feel as though they've enjoyed the whole bracket. They will forget what happened during the first number. I use the number 1 callers throughout the program to provide balance and lift. And as the program goes on, I increase the number of number 1 callers that I will use. In other words, I will use more number 1 callers towards the end of the program than I do at the beginning or in the middle of the program, because this keeps the dancers more entertained. It builds the atmosphere of the dance as it goes along. And if people were feeling as though they might leave for the second last tip or the last tip, if they can see that there are 2 or 3 really top-line callers going to finish the program up, it will encourage them to maybe stay on a little bit longer and finish the evening. I've got a philosophy about callers that read material. Now, I'm not talking about callers that glance at notes or that have a cue sheet there to use for patter, because it's very difficult to remember all the patter. But I'm talking about a caller that stands there and he calls head couple square through, right and left through the outside 2, and dive through and square through 3/4, hello man left and a right and left grand, meet your partner, swing and promenade. Oh, you weren't doing that. My philosophy towards this is if the dancing program starts at 8, these callers should be programmed at 7:30. Because they don't need the dancers to call like that, and the dancers certainly don't need them. Moving on to programming workshops, I've got a little quote here from Jim Mayer, who has been in calling for a long time and has run some excellent sessions, particularly over this weekend. Jim said regarding programs of workshops, it's sometimes difficult for a dancer to tell the difference between a dance and a workshop. This is not desirable. There should be a difference, and the way to make the difference is with the program design. In a dance, your goal should be a minimum of walkthroughs and explanations. And I don't think that Jim was suggesting at this stage that a workshop should be the exact opposite, that it should be a maximum of walkthroughs and explanations. He goes on, you should choose your material so that these are not necessary. For a workshop program, you should try to pick material that will teach something, as a workshop is not a workshop if all you do is call more complicated figures without explanation. End of quote. Before you start a workshop, there are a number of things that you need to know in the form of variable factors. You need to know the time that's allotted for the workshop, and this is also true of all the other dance programs that we've been talking about. Sole caller doing the workshop, or are you going to be sharing the workshop with 1 or 2 other callers, as is often the case. And, of course, all of the other factors that we previously discussed. On a 1-hour session, as the sole caller for a workshop, I would suggest a program designed something like this. It's a 3-tip program. Tip 1 would be a warm-up of the dancers so that you can get to know each other. The caller can get to know the dancers and the dancers can get to know the caller. During this bracket, you would try to build the confidence of the dancers in your ability to get them through, because I feel that a good caller is a caller that can get the dancers through stuff that they really didn't think they could do. A poor caller is a caller that will have the dancers breaking down on material that they really know. In the first bracket, I'd choose interesting choreography and carefully build up the dancer's concentration. Use something like half tag, turn left, or partner hinge, things like this. Make sure that you can get the dancers through. Make sure the dancers are winning. As Keith said, circulate once and a half is another nice one that gets the dancers paying attention rather swiftly. Tip 2. In this tip, I'd present the main part of my workshop material, whatever the figure was that you'd decided to workshop, and it can be, as we know, any sort of material at all. You can present something that's brand new, something that's a quarterly selection, something that you've just picked out of the air or out of Belson's encyclopedia, in which case the dancers would probably never see it again, but I feel that there is a time and place for this sort of material. Or you may be workshopping stuff that you feel the dancers are a little bit shaky on within a program that they're already dancing. In the last tip, depending on the type of material that you had selected to do in the second tip, I would either continue with that vein. If I was doing something, say, out of the mainstream program that was very interesting, like wheel and deals that can cover several tips, I'd probably continue with the wheel and deals in the last tip and finish up the tip with something that was maybe more light-hearted and a little different. Finish up with something the dancers can dance and relax with, preferably using the material that you have been workshopping. I'd like to move on now to what I feel is a very important part of a dance program. How am I going with time, Daryl? This is a program that I've written out for a 6-tip dance program with suggestions to extend it to a 7 or 8-tip program, and copies of this will be available through the CALLERLAB home office. If you are interested, you can sign a sheet down here, put your name on a sheet, and copies of this will be available to you through the home office. When you're designing a program, you need good judgment. And an American general once said that good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from poor judgment. If you don't write a program, you're likely to end up in a rut. And the definition of a rut is a grave with the ends kicked out. In the first tip, I'd suggest the use of good rhythmical patter music. If you're unfamiliar with the dancers and the dancers are unfamiliar with you, the music shouldn't be too driving. You should try and get the dancers on side, make things easy for them to understand. Overemphasize your pronunciation. Bill Peters did an excellent session this morning on showmanship, and he was talking about overemphasizing gestures, and I think the same is true of pronunciation. Don't assume that the dancers can understand what you say, particularly if you say pass through and half square through in America. I called for a club up in Portland, and in the first bracket I called head couples pass through, and I had about 4 squares just stop and looked at me, and I had to stop and say head couples pass through. I got the message and went, well, we were friends after that. If you frequently call for the dancers, then you can use music that's more driving, because you don't need to build up a rapport with the dancers to the same extent. Singing call should be a nice gentle one with gentle rhythm, and something that you do nicely, something the dancers are going to be able to carry out a psychoanalyzation of you, work out whether they can get away with things with you, and etc., because everybody does that right from the word somebody takes the microphone. The choreography should be predictable, and if you're going to put any little surprises in it, the surprises should be minor so that the dancers don't get trapped up, because if they foul up in the first tip, then you've got to try and recover them again. In the second tip, all the dancers should have arrived, and in my opinion this is the time to test out the floor. Do maybe a little bit of DBD dancing within the level that the dance has been advertised as, and you should know what level you're going to be calling at before you arrive at the dance, or before you start calling at least, and know what sort of level the dancers are used to. As far as the singing call is concerned, I'd select using maybe a golden oldie type thing. Try to have something that's going to have even the spectators tapping their feet, something that's got good rhythm. In the third tip, if you're going to do a workshop, I'd suggest that now is the time to do it. And the dancers should have tuned in, you should have worked out what they're able to do, and they should be used to you. With your singing call, if the workshop material has been well understood by the dancers, then I'd use probably something that's a nice upbeat type singing call, and use the choreography that I've used in the workshop. If the dancers maybe have had a little trouble with the workshop material, I'd use something that was more of a ballad, even though Keith doesn't like using too many ballads. I feel that now would be the right time to use it, something that's not going to drive the dancers along too much. In the fourth tip, I'd possibly use 2 singing calls. Try to relax the dancers with the first number. If you're going to use a hoedown for the first number, then I would make it a predictable type of hoedown, something that wasn't going to have too many surprises in it for the dancers, because they've just probably finished a rather hectic sort of a workshop tip, and you need to bring them back to earth again. Let them relax. The second number, if you're using 2 singing calls, your second number should be probably something with a little bit of a drive in it, and aim for a peak. If you've done a hoedown, then you can either finish off with something that's nice and relaxing, or once again go for a peak. And I'd suggest using something like Dream Lover, Rocking in Rosalie's Boat, Rag and a Call, Hallelujah, I'm Ready to Go, something like that. In the fifth tip, I'd make this a theme tip. And although I feel it's important to make every tip a theme as far as patter is concerned, I feel before you get up to call a patter, you should have some plan worked out in your mind as to what sort of choreography you're going to use in the way of figures or formations. You can feature either formations or a particular choreography, star patterns, or you might feature walk and dodges, you might feature square throughs, you might feature lines, that sort of thing. You can use this tip to maybe explore a basic that the dancers, you feel the dancers know fairly thoroughly. Not to the extent that it's a workshop tip and you're walking the dancers through, but maybe give the dancers some interesting choreography using figures that they already know. Sixth tip, I'm suggesting could be the last tip, and depending on how long your evening program is, as to whether this would be the sixth tip or not, and I won't go through the other tips that I've suggested. If you're interested in them, they will be available from the Home Office in a printed form if you wish. This is the final bracket, and you've got your choice of either leaving the dancers swinging from the chandeliers or let them down gently. I feel that there should be a contrast within the bracket between the singing calls that you use. And once again, you can use either 2 singing calls, and I frequently use 2 singing calls in the last tip. You can have, if you're going to make the last one a slow, sleepy, dreamy type thing, then you'd need to make the first one something that was more get up and go, or possibly a Latin American type rhythm, something that was going to be a contrast from the last one. If the last one is going to be a screamer, then the first one could be something that was a little bit more dreamy, maybe another one of the ballads that Keith's thrown out of his box. I occasionally also use it as a gimmick bracket, and for those of you who are interested, there's some photographs down at the Chinook stall. I occasionally, Booth to you too. I occasionally get dressed up, and at the dance that I did for Daryl, I came along to the dance dressed in a yellow polka dot bikini underneath my square dance clothes, because I wasn't sure whether I wanted to expose my body to the crowd because I hadn't met them, and I felt if I didn't want to do it, then I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't tell anybody that I had it on, and they wouldn't know the difference. But if I did want to do it, then I was prepared. And in the last number, I called Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini. And while I was calling, I got undressed and just had my bikini on. I also, for the last number in a tip, I'll occasionally turn the lights out and have the dancers dancing in almost complete dark. And I point out to them that years ago, the type of dancing we used to do was Texas-style dancing, and then Californian-style dancing became more popular, and that's the sort of dancing that we do generally right throughout the world. And all of this is, I'm talking to the dancers while the lights are out, mainly to get them used to the dark, and then I tell them that the type of dancing we're going to do in this number is dancing by braille. And they should be careful of the bumps that they happen to feel. Thank you for this opportunity of talking to you. Thank you, Daryl.
Brian Hotchkies from Australia. Very nice. We will have some, just a couple of minutes for some questions that you might have of these fellows up here. Before we do that, I would like to just very, very briefly give you my idea of programming, which pretty well goes along with everything that they've said, except to me a program generally isn't what I call. It doesn't really vary very much. I call the same program over and over and over and over again because it's a format that I follow during the dance evening. Have you ever been to a movie that didn't have an ending? You know, they went along a long time, and every movie went the same way. They had the boy met girl, and you had the villains, and you had the Star Wars. Isn't that what made Star Wars so doggone popular when it first came out? It had every element of a good story, didn't it? Every element. And the happy ending, everything. The boy got the girl, the villain got put away, and it was wonderful. I think a good dance program's got to be the same way, and practically everything that we do, everything that you do is going to follow a program format. And as I looked at programs, whether it was on the television or in magazines or any place else, they all seem to fit about the same program format, and it's a very comfortable format that the dancers can feel comfortable with. When you walk into a dance hall to start your dance, well, let me put it like you're writing a novel. Same program format. You start with an introduction of some sort. You set a scene. It was a nice day in Portland, Oregon. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and then an introduction of characters. Mary Lou walked out on her front porch and met the paperboy. She always liked the paperboy, and you're introducing the characters. Say, here we are, we're at the party. I'm the caller, you're the dancers. That first hit, isn't that what we're doing with the first hit? We start building a storyline with the second hit. We develop a plot. It gets a little bit thicker and heavier. All of a sudden, there's some sort of a climax at what point in the story, and then there's some sort of an ending. A dance runs just about the same way. Almost all very successful dance programs run the same way. You're going to walk into the hall. You're going to introduce yourself to the dancers by calling material that will allow you to do that in that first hit. You're going to start developing a storyline by testing out the dancers a little bit. You're going to workshop the dancers someplace. You're going to make them work. You're going to develop that plot, and you're going to build to some sort of a climax after that, and you're going to resolve the dance with maybe something lighthearted, or the, Roy Rogers or Lone Ranger rides off in the sunset with a beautiful girl, and everybody goes home happy. Same old, same old, same old. A good program is going to run pretty much that way, dance after dance after dance. It doesn't make any difference if it's going to be new dance or hoedown, mainstream dance, plus dance, advanced dance, what have you. If you get those same sort of elements into your dance program, you're going to have a good dance program. Let's face it, we all use the same material, don't we? It's all the same records. We all dress pretty much the same way. Use the same speakers, same equipment, same dance movements. There's got to be something different from one caller to another, and I would suggest that it's the dance program, the way the guy puts his dance program together, the way he can trap those dancers emotionally by going at it step by step and make them feel very comfortable and very happy about what they've been doing at that dance. I also suggest that maybe the reason some of us have a real good dance tonight, and we call the same basic choreographic material and singing calls, etc., a week from tonight, and the dance isn't near as good, maybe we didn't put it together the same way as far as the program, the basic format program goes. So, I just wanted to add that to it. Do you have any questions for these fellows on programming? Something that they may have said that you would like to know a little bit more about, that they can answer? The microphone is available. Don't just sit there. They were that thorough. Wonderful. Can't beat a deal like that. All right. We thank you for coming. I guess we're free until dinner time. Thank you. Yes, you can sign up for that handout up front up here on Brian Hotchkies' presentation.